Welcome to Concussion Fix Minisodes. These bite-sized clips are taken directly from our full podcast episodes to give you direct answers to your specific questions about persistent concussion symptoms and recovery. Short, clear, and packed with value. Now remember that these clips are not medical advice and you should always speak with your healthcare provider before attempting anything you hear on this channel. Let's go.
And are you familiar with the FODMAP diet?
I am, yes.
Because I'm following that diet and I was wondering how to combine it, or if I should combine it with the Concussion Fix diet.
Yeah, so the FODMAP diet, just for everyone that doesn't know or never hasn't heard of that type of diet before, it's a specific diet that's avoiding what are called fermentable oligosaccharides. That's what the FO stands for. And those particular types of sugars, that's what saccharides are, can be fermented by the microbiome, bacteria in our gut, that sometimes is imbalanced or dysbiotic. It's a very common diet for people that are experiencing things like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. So you can absolutely combine that type of diet, because what the FODMAP diet really is just a list of foods that are high in these fermentable oligosaccharides, and you want to avoid or minimize those foods as much as possible. And there's lots of resources online that rank the different types of foods from the highest for these fermentable oligosaccharides down to the lowest, and a person's trying to eat as much from the low category as possible. So you can just basically cross-reference that lowest category with the recommendations that we're making in the Concussion Fix a diet. We are very specific when we created this diet that we didn't want to give people almost something that's very rigid and prescriptive, like you have to eat 1,800 calories a day and you have to eat 1 cup of blueberries, and so we've given some general recommendations. It's meant to be more of a roadmap than an actual step-by-step, minute-by-minute guide. Once you understand the concepts, you can apply it to any sort of diet. So if it happens to be FODMAPs diet, then absolutely you can implement both of them at the same time. Now, it might be a little bit more restrictive because you're avoiding some of those foods that are on that high FODMAP list, but it's absolutely doable.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was kind of what I was thinking, that it's kind of getting a lot to not eat. To do
It's a
both.
bit more restrictive. There's no doubt it's
Yeah.
going to be a little bit more restrictive for you, but I think it's doable. And we've had a number of other members go through the program with other types of diets and still be successful.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. And for when I'm at the stage to reintroduce food, I was wondering how I should do that in a good way, because I noticed that my body kind of needs some time to get used to things. So when do I know that I really cannot have it? And when is it just like an adjustment period?
Yeah. Really, really good question. I'm sure everyone's thinking the same thing about whenever you pull any food out of your diet, how do you bring it back in? So after you've avoided a food for a period of time, usually more than 4 weeks is long enough. But in your case, if you've been trying to follow the FODMAP diet for weeks and months, that's more than enough. I would suggest that you try to implement all the components of the Concussion Fix diet first, and then after you've implemented all those components for at least, I'm going to say 4 weeks, actually 6 weeks would be perfect, would be ideal. Then you can start looking at introducing each one of those foods that you've been avoiding for one at a time after that 6 weeks. Now, I think that if you're deciding to use FODMAPs, I don't know if that's under the recommendation and the oversight of another healthcare provider, or you're just doing it.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Then maybe talk, if you are, then maybe talk to them about how they plan on reintroducing those foods, because what I'm just thinking is that if you're doing some sort of protocol in order to kind of rebalance your microbiome, there might be some additional components to, okay, we've avoided the FODMAPs, but now we actually need to weed out some of the bad bacteria that are present there. In that case, you may need to do a couple other steps before you reintroduce those foods. And so that would be something to talk to them about.
What kind of steps are you thinking about?
Well, for example, like, if there's a particular condition like IBS, we start looking at, okay, so why does a person have IBS? Is it food sensitivities? Is it, and there's testing that can be done for that. What I'm really thinking about is something called dysbiosis, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. This is a condition or a group of conditions that are basically an imbalance of too much bacteria, too many bacteria in the wrong spot. So what has to happen, and you need to either take antibiotics or herbal antimicrobials to eliminate those bacteria. And there's research showing that, something like 30% of people with IBS have some sort of dysbiosis happening. There's a lot of overlap with this small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, SIBO. And you could also have fungal overgrowth as well. So these are things that require some testing, and then also some intervention to change the microbial environment. And then maybe your provider wants to add things in. So I'm not sure what their plan is.
Okay. Yeah, the thing is, I've been following this diet for years, so I'm not currently with a food specialist, but I have an appointment for next week.
Okay.
And
Good
I
timing.
wanted to ask them to combine these diets, how to work that, and if I should reintroduce some stuff first or not. But I think you answered already that it's a good thing to first implement the whole thing and then try if I can do things back in. I have indeed the IBS, so I am curious if that dysbiosis is maybe also something to have a look at.
I'm glad you asked this question before your visit, because it's going to give you some specific talking points to speak to the provider about, is there any way we can test for there's this underlying issue behind IBS? Is there anything else that we should do before we start reintroducing these foods? Because if you've been avoiding them for years, that's quite a long time. That's more than enough for you now to give it a trial. And they may just say, just go ahead and give it a trial without doing any sort of work. But ask those pointed questions for them.
Yes, thank you. That's also why I wanted to ask it before I saw them. I thought maybe I have some more background in what to ask and what to notice. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for your question.
We do get a lot of questions on reintroduction. I know when I did the elimination diet, they suggested picking one food and doing it over the course of a couple days. Yeah. Is that kind of what you recommend?
Yeah, exactly. So if we went the food elimination reintroduction route, then you want to take one food and really in its purest form. Like, let's say, for example, in your case, it would be eggs. You've mentioned that before. If you wanted to challenge that again, then you would just basically have scrambled eggs without anything else in it, not a compound food with multiple things. Like my wife made crepes for the kids, which had, dairy and eggs in it this morning. So that would be definitely one step. But just the point about FODMAPs, that's not a food sensitivity. That is an environmental, ecological bacterial overgrowth that's causing the fermentation of these oligosaccharides. So that's the elimination and reintroduction works better for food sensitivities, but not as well for these classes of high oligosaccharide foods. So that's a bit different. That's where you have to kind of readjust the environment before we start reintroducing.
Right. Thanks for listening to this Concussion Fix Minisode. If you want to learn more about the causes of persistent concussion symptoms and how to fix them, join one of our upcoming free 90-minute patient webinars. Details and sign-up links are in the description. You'll see that with the right approach, recovery is possible. See you there.